Discover the amazing moment a shy woman comforted a crying child, transforming lives unseen. Rain pelted the windows of the small-town library like a million tiny hammers, echoing the loneliness that often wrapped around Julia's heart. She felt like a ghost herself, drifting through the aisles of books stacked high and whispering forgotten stories. In her late 30s, she was a reserved librarian aiming to escape the shadows of her childhood, where she had often gone unnoticed and underestimated. Her dreams collected dust along with the spine of old novels no one read anymore, and she wondered, was it too late to redefine herself? With every week that passed, the chatter among the community grew louder. They revered boldness, esteemed the upbeat. Where Julia found solace in the whispers of pages flipping, others flourished in the clarity of loud voices. Did her modest contributions in the library even matter? As she reshelved books, Julia wrestled with doubt, her mind racing through memories of being overlooked, filling her with a familiar unease alongside the storm brewing outside. In the stillness, she found her usual corner, where the light barely stretched. But then, a shivering sound broke her sanctuary, a muffled sob. She turned, half expecting to find a displaced book or loose paper. Instead, it was Ethan, a boy no older than 10, curled up among the stacks. His shoulders shook as he pressed his face into his knees, trapped by a world that seemed to have forgotten him. She knelt beside him, heart tightening, recognizing the familiar turmoil brewing behind his tear-streaked face. "Hey, are you okay?" Julia's voice trembled like the rain against the glass. He didn't respond, but the empathy swelling in her chest made her resolve to try again. "It's okay to be upset. You can talk to me." Facing an audience of one, she found her voice, reciting tales of her childhood struggles, of the books that served as her steadfast companions when isolation seeped around her. With every story shared, a bond formed in the silence, feeding a hunger for understanding, each word connecting their experiences in a way that the world outside never did. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But just as their connection rippled with promise, outside voices began to murmur. Some questioned why a woman like her, quiet, unassuming, dared to step into a role meant for more confident souls. Was she wasting her potential? Each whisper gnawed at her determination, clawing at her fragile sense of purpose. Striding into the light felt like a bold act of defiance against the very shadows she fought so hard to escape. Ethan deserved this space filled with stories, yet with every decision she made, Julia confronted her own fears about who she was becoming. As she prepared for their weekly story hour, tension enveloped her like the gathering storm. Some parents supported her idea, but others stood against it, seeding doubt into her resolve. What if her bravery opened her to more ridicule? Should she recede back, shrinking into silence once again? Julia inhaled sharply, the question of these few becoming a tidal wave crashing against her entire world. The stakes felt unbearably high. Could a single act of kindness shift everything, or would it cut deeper into her fragile psyche? In that moment, as she stood before a wall of whispered expectations, the decision loomed larger than life. Would she let the town's collective judgment silence her voice, or would she confront it, a single flicker of light in a world waiting to embrace change? The weight of her small revolution pressed against her resolve, and Julia knew, with every heartbeat, that the real battle was just beginning. The storm outside seemed to mirror Julia's inner turmoil, each drop drumming against the windows like her racing heart. The library, her refuge, now felt constricting, shadows twisting and folding within the dim light as if bearing witness to her indecision. She settled into her favorite reading nook, the heavy scent of aged paper and dust a balm against her growing anxiety. Yet, comfort was fleeting. The promise of her connection with Ethan lingered in her thoughts, challenging her to step into the light for real. Sitting surrounded by books long silent, Julia closed her eyes, inhaling deeply to summon the courage that had eluded her just moments prior. She thought about her own childhood in that very same town, a girl unseen even in the overflow of voices that dominated the conversations. But what if she could alter that narrative, even if for just one small boy? What if this week during story hour her chance to instill a sense of wonder could turn the tides of her own life, as well as Ethan's? The rain faltered, leaving an eerie silence punctuated only by the ticking clock on the wall. Tomorrow, the story hour would commence. Julia needed a plan. It wouldn't just be reading. She could weave in interactive elements that encouraged the children to create, to express, to let their stories come alive. She imagined a space infused with exploration, where voices like hers could find footing and grow solid. The more she contemplated, the more vivacious the idea became. The tales she yearned to share were not merely mere words on paper but avenues of escape and discovery for the children gathered before her. Could kindness catalyze her own transformation in the very act of teaching it? She grabbed a pencil and began to jot down thoughts, her heart pounding vigorously as ideas burst forth, flowing like the rain that had now become a steady patter against the roof. But as the pages filled, doubt slithered back into her mind. What if the parents scrutinized her efforts? She envisioned their skeptical faces, the way they de-roll their eyes at her attempts at creativity, branding her as unfit for a role that required confidence. Those nagging doubts pricked at her resolve, and she placed her pencil down, fingers trembling against the desk. Would her fear of failure overshadow the spark she hoped to ignite? With a newfound determination, Julia forced herself to rise, pacing the narrow aisles of that hallowed sanctuary. She needed a form of proof, something tangible that the children and, perhaps, she herself could hold on to. She thought about the very essence of storytelling. It wasn't about perfection, it was about connection. The thought unsettled her, revealing a gap between her longing for validation and the authenticity of human experience. Suddenly, Julia wasn't just preparing for story hour, she was confronting her demons, questioning her worth, and acknowledging her hidden potential. Somewhere along the way, she realized that her voice could resonate, even against the cacophony of judgment. Tomorrow would be different. Gathering her notes, she leaned into her conviction. Julia understood that the true risk lay in remaining passive, allowing silence to drown out her voice. She may stumble, but at least she would leap forward, not confined by unseen barriers anymore. With growing clarity, she felt the walls of her isolation beginning to crumble. There was power in vulnerability, a strength in her softness. Would her courage inspire not just the children but echo back to herself, rewriting the story of who she was meant to be? As the clock chimed softly, announcing the close of the day, Julia gripped her notes tightly, heart racing at the unknown territory ahead. All that stood between her and a brave new engagement was the sunrise of tomorrow. But would the town embrace her voice, or would she find herself silenced by old fears? The moment of truth was fast approaching, and Julia was about to uncover a hidden part of herself, one that dared to emerge from the shadows. Morning stretched across the town like a long-awaited promise as the first rays of sunlight slipped through Julia's bedroom window. Despite the warmth of the sun, a chill ran through her as she prepared for the story hour. Every detail mattered: her carefully chosen books, the props that would bring the stories to life, and the distinct energy she hoped to create in the small library room. Yet, beneath her preparations lurked apprehension, twisting her stomach into knots. Dressed in a simple but thoughtful outfit, Julia stood before the mirror, scrutinizing herself. Could someone who often felt invisible truly engage the children? Her reflection seemed to challenge her, asking if she was ready to take the plunge. She took a steadying breath, acknowledging that today marked a new chapter, not just for the children, but for her as well. Arriving at the library, Julia paused outside the heavy wooden door, her heartbeat loud in her ears. She could hear the low buzz of chatter beyond, children's excitement mingling with the hesitant whispers of their parents. What if they judged her? What if they compared her style to previous readers, dismissing her efforts outright. These thoughts threatened to unmoor her resolve, yet she reminded herself that connection mattered more than perfection. As she stepped inside, the room brightened with the vibrant energy of eager faces, curious and untainted by the world's judgments. Julia felt a flicker of warmth surge within her, feeding off the children's innocent enthusiasm. She had envisioned this moment being special, but the reality surpassed her expectations. Each child brought a unique spark, and just as she felt out of place, she also felt a pull to unite them through stories. Sitting down on the oversized cushion in the reading nook, Julia beckoned the children closer. She began reading a whimsical tale about a hero who transformed fears into strengths, her voice steady, wrapped in the laughter and gasps of her young audience. With each turn of the page, she integrated questions, urging them to imagine what they would do in the hero's place. Yet, as her confidence grew, she noticed Ethan sitting quietly on the edge, an untouched book clutched tightly in his hands. His face was shadowed with uncertainty, as if he were gripping not just a book, but also the weight of his own fears. Struggling to keep all the children engaged and noticing a potential turning point for Ethan, she felt a surge of responsibility intertwining with her growing courage. In our story, the hero faced darkness, but together, they found their way back to the light, she said, looking directly at Ethan. What if you were that hero? What fears do you think you could turn into something amazing? Her heart raced, the moment suspended in palpable tension as she awaited his response. Would he respond, or retreat further into silence? Ethan glanced up, eyes wide. For an instant, it seemed as if an invisible barrier was cracking, understanding passed between them. I don't want to be scared of the dark anymore, he spoke softly, and Julia's heart swelled at the courage it took to voice that sentiment. Then let us imagine a way to light that darkness, Julia urged, teetering on a precipice she had long feared to traverse. What if we draw our very own heroes and what they can do together with us? Let's turn those fears into stories of strength. As the children formed small groups to create their drawings, Julia felt an anchor forming in the chaos of her thoughts. There was an electric energy in the air now, a bridge built from her vulnerability that allowed them to share not just tales but a collective resurgence of hope. In that moment, Julia recognized an enduring truth: she wasn't just leading a story hour, she was co-creating an experience that might redefine not only Ethan's perspective but her own as well. As laughter filled the room and Ethan smiled for the first time, a sense of impending transformation washed over her. The walls constructed by her fears were now riddled with cracks, allowing light and clarity to seep through. Yet, just as this epiphany unfolded, a shadow darted outside the window, reminding her that obstacles were not finished. Would the children remember her words? Would the parents see the value in her approach? Julia's heart quickened as she felt the looming uncertainty of those external judgments. The moment of reckoning was only beginning. What awaited on the other side of these shared stories? As the laughter continued to echo through the small library room, Julia basked momentarily in the glow of shared creativity, but her thoughts spiraled back into uncertainty. She knew that the moment was fleeting, a high that would soon meet the reality of outside pressures. Was she truly capable of making a lasting difference? In the whirlwind of emotions surrounding her, the voices of doubt clawed at the edges of her mind. The children sprawled on the soft carpet, engaged in their drawings, but Julia's focus honed in on Ethan. He was deep in thought, pencil in hand, eyes darting across the empty space of his page. She felt a pull to approach him again, an urge to connect even deeper. But would she intrude on his process? The question hung heavy, battling against her desire to offer guidance. With resolve, she found herself beside him. "What are you thinking about, Ethan?" His gaze flickered up, surprise evident on his face. Instead of retreating, he opened up slightly, showing her a rough outline of a creature that looked both fierce and hopeful. "I'm not sure if I can make him strong enough," Ethan admitted, biting his lip. The rawness of his vulnerability struck Julia like a beacon. Here was a boy, grappling with fear and self-doubt, just as she had so many times in her own life. "Strength doesn't mean being big or loud," Julia said gently. It can mean having the courage to stand up for yourself, or the bravery to express how you feel through your art. She felt her heart race as she spoke, the influence of her words stretched beyond the moment, presenting a mirror to her own challenges. Ethan nodded slowly, processing what she had shared. Julia was acutely aware of how her anxiety often clouded her ability to communicate her own thoughts, yet here, in this moment, vulnerability had turned into a bridge of connection. Her voice began to clarify, lifting from her usual mumble to something more teacher-like, more assertive. Let us think about what empowers your hero. What can they do that you admire? Ethan's eyes lit up, and he began to sketch more vigorously, telling Julia about the different powers he wanted this creature to possess. As she listened, the joy of his creative discovery ignited something within her. For once, she wasn't just a passive participant in a narrative, she was shaping it alongside him. Other children, curious by Ethan's enthusiasm, flocked around. Julia felt a burning desire to guide not only him but all these kids into deeper levels of understanding and self-expression. She started to facilitate a discussion about bravery. What does it mean to be brave? How can we face our fears? Hands shot up, eager to share. Each child contributed a piece of their own experiences, and Julia took their stories in, allowing them to weave together an increasingly intricate tapestry of shared fears and triumphs. With each new voice, her confidence swelled, and she knew that her role was evolving. When the session came to a close, she felt as if she had awoken a part of herself long muted by fear and second-guessing. Managing the living energy in the room, she took a moment to express her pride. You all have shown so much strength today. Remember that those feelings we sketched and shared are as important as any story. You've helped each other become heroes in your own right. Yet, just as Julia settled into this newfound purpose, a tap at the door pulled her back to reality. The library director stood there with a concerned frown. Julia, can we talk for a moment? The instant tension snapped her confidence, sending a frisson of anxiety through her body. This wasn't about the kids anymore, this was about her and the stakes of judgment looming ever larger. Would this be a conversation of recognition or one of reprimand? Her heart raced as the director's expression darkened. She had ignited something inside the children, but what would that cautious reality mean for her? With every step to the office, the shadows of doubt gathered again, threatening to extinguish the light she had briefly caught hold of. Would her efforts be celebrated, or would they reveal her vulnerabilities, amplifying the very fears she hoped to dismantle for Ethan? The answers lay just beyond the door, in a world where she was about to confront her deepest insecurities once and for all. The air shifted as Julia stepped into the office, a palpable heaviness settling around her. The director, a stern figure in a crisp button-up, gestured for her to sit. Julia felt the cool surface of the chair beneath her, solid but uninviting, mirroring the uncertainty swirling in her mind. Julia, the director began, her voice measured but lacking warmth. I've observed your interactions with the children today. You've stirred up quite a bit of enthusiasm. But we need to discuss the management of that energy. Each word landed heavily, as if echoing Julia's past failures in communication. A knot formed in Julia's stomach. Is that a bad thing? She managed to ask, her voice wavering. It depends, the director replied, looking her in the eye with an intensity that made Julia squirm. Unstructured creativity can lead to chaos. We don't want to lose control of the narrative we're constructing here. Control. The word hung in the air, taunting her. How often had she felt that lack of control in her life, frozen by indecision and anxiety? But was that what she had done today? Her instinct to nurture, to encourage exploration, sprouted from a desire to do something meaningful. Yet here she sat, questioning every action. But, she spoke, her voice more assertive now, carrying the remnants of the excitement she had felt not long ago. The children were expressing themselves. They're learning to confront their fears. Isn't that important? The director sighed, a flicker of understanding passing over her features. Of course, it is. But we need structure too. Balancing their creativity with guidance will yield better results. Think of it as sculpting. You can't just throw clay onto a wheel without a clear vision. It will fall apart. As Julia nodded, a realization began to dawn upon her. The children's journey wasn't solely about unleashing creativity but about learning how to contain and direct it, a lesson not only for them but for her, too. Perhaps her own fears of judgment and uncertainty had held her back from embracing a balanced approach to teaching. I see what you're saying, Julia replied, her tone gaining strength. Maybe I can create structured activities that still allow the children to express their thoughts and emotions freely. It doesn't have to be one or the other. The director raised an eyebrow, a hint of approval glimmering in her gaze. That could work. It shows growth on your part, certainly. We want to cultivate a nurturing environment, but it requires a firm hand at times. When Julia left the office, she felt as if a weight had been lifted. The conversation, although initially intimidating, had morphed into a revelation. She had navigated the delicate balance between emotional honesty and professional responsibility, a microcosm of her larger struggle for self-acceptance. In the following sessions, Julia began to implement structured yet flexible activities. She observed how the children thrived when given boundaries, empowering them to rise to new creative challenges. With each positive interaction, her confidence solidified, rekindling that spark of passion she felt while connecting with Ethan. While the echo of laughter returned to the small library, she noted something important: the challenges she faced were not just obstacles but opportunities for growth. However, her next lesson loomed larger. As she watched Ethan scribble with renewed vigor, she sensed a storm brewing in the air. One of the students, Sam, had grown restless. She caught his glare flicking toward the corner where he typically sat alone, a storm of emotions hidden behind his dark eyes. The unease stilled her joy. This could spiral into something dangerous, and she found herself caught between guiding and confronting. The moment had arrived for Julia to face a new layer of complexity within her, teaching how to help a child on the brink of emotional breaking. The question nagged at her: would she be able to break through the barriers Sam had built, or would he retreat further into silence? The stakes felt higher than ever. The clamor of young voices faded into a dull roar in Julia's mind as she fixated on Sam. His posture was closed, arms tightly folded, eyes riveting to a horizon only he could see. In her prior sessions, Sam had been relatively disengaged, a shadow among the more boisterous children. However, today there was something unmistakable in the air, an electric pulse of tension radiating from him, threatening to peel back the fragile layers of order she had begun to weave. Julia had studied developmental psychology. She knew the signs of distress, the instinct to retreat. But theory often faltered in the face of real emotion. She could feel her pulse quickening, the weight of expectation pressed against her shoulders. This was not just about teaching art. It was an opportunity to reach a child who needed to be seen. Does he even know how to express what he's feeling? She wondered, battling the urgency she felt within. The director's words echoed in her mind, warning against the chaos of unstructured emotion. But her heart whispered another truth: children needed to feel before they could structure their feelings. She decided to cultivate a space for vulnerability. "All right, everyone. Let us gather in a circle," Julia called out, her voice brushing against the backdrop of whispered anxiety. She hoped Sam would respond not just for her sake, but for his. As the children settled, she noticed Sam's eyes darting around, measuring the safety of the circle, to see if he truly belonged within it. Julia took a moment, heeding the significance of this gathering, and drew a deep breath that she hoped would embody calmness. "Today, I want us to create a picture of something that makes us happy," she began, her tone gentle but firm. "But we can also draw how we feel when we're not so happy." She allowed the thought to hang, intentionally leaving spaces for thoughts to wander. The mixture of emotions was her intention, a silent signal to Sam that he wasn't alone. There was a flurry of colors that erupted as crayons flew across the paper. Julia floated around the circle, maintaining a presence that was both encouraging and observant. The usual lively chatter soon turned into a soft hum, punctuated by giggles and whispers. Yet Sam remained unusually quiet, his brow knit in concentration, nearly erasing the soft outline of his paper. "Hey, Sam," Julia ventured softly as she approached him. "What are you creating?" He looked up, startled, a storm of emotions playing out behind the intensity of his gaze. "Nothing," he muttered, the word escaping his lips like a soft plea. "Can I sit with you?" Julia asked, settling down beside him, respecting the distance he had inadvertently maintained. He hesitated but slowly nodded. "Sometimes, it's hard to draw what we feel, isn't it?" she said, settling into the quietness of the moment. "But whatever you're feeling is just as important as what makes you happy." This was her own learning moment, a bid for authenticity that mirrored the children's creative expressions. Sam's eyes flickered up, uncertainty marring his features. "What if it's bad?" "Bad?" Julia echoed, encouraging him to confront the word's heaviness. "We all feel bad sometimes. It helps us take care of our heart, just like it helps us appreciate the good." The tension in Sam's shoulders relaxed infinitesimally. For the first time, Julia saw him begin to pick up the crayon with a tentative resolve. Her heart raced not to break the floodgates, but to nudge open the door they both knew existed. As the session unfolded, Julia watched as Sam unveiled strokes of dark blues and grays scattered across vibrant hues. It was a complex map of a child grappling with his feelings, and she realized it was not just an illustration but a vital step toward understanding himself. When they concluded, Sam cautiously approached her with the paper folded tightly in his hand. "I don't know if it's any good," he admitted, a desperate flicker of insecurity embedded in his passive tone. Julia knelt down to meet him at eye level, a warmth spilling from her smile. "Sam, it doesn't need to be good. It's real. And real matters. Thank you for trusting me." In that moment, she felt a lightness she hadn't known before. Confronting fear, guiding through chaos while each approach teaching held its own weight, here was her revelation. In helping Sam confront his internal battle, she was rewriting her story too. But in a corner of her mind, the interplay of emotions and the storm outside remained unsettled. She understood that this was a singular moment in a greater narrative of struggle and growth for both of them. As she reflected on their connection, Julia sensed another challenge on the horizon. Little did she know, Sam's breakthrough was merely a prelude to a much larger challenge ahead, one that would not only test her resolve further but also question the foundations of her practice. Would she be able to maintain her confidence as more complex emotions surfaced among the children? The inquiry loomed like shadows on a wall, unseen yet undeniable. As the days slipped forward, the promise of growth hung tantalizingly in the air, yet Julia found herself increasingly straddling the thin line between hope and uncertainty. Sam's vibrant artwork had unveiled a glimpse of himself that she dared not ignore, yet a creeping unease settled in her chest. What now? She pondered these questions as the children's laughter rang through the workshop, each peal amplifying the low whirlpool of anxiety within her. Julia immersed herself in observation, tracking each child's movements, their expressions, and the subtle undercurrents of interaction. The sessions shifted, they morphed into an unpredictable dance of emotions. What once felt like a sacred space of creativity now resembled a storm brewing on the horizon. The children were opening up, challenging her, testing her resolve. It was exhilarating yet terrifying. Painting is like magic, she often told them, invoking the light-hearted mirth she hoped would carry them through their explorations. Yet herself, she wondered if she could wield the same magic to confront her own fears, or if the bright strokes of inspiration could hold firm against the shadows lurking within. The next session arrived, the atmosphere crackled with an infectious energy, yet Julia sensed an impending wave of emotions. Two children struggled as they rejected the colors presented. Anger rose in one, while sorrow clung to another. Julia's heart raced. How do I navigate this? The skills she had honed in theory seemed inadequate when faced with such raw sentiment. Sometimes art can seem scary. But it's okay to feel scared. It means something is important, she gently encouraged, targeting the group with her gaze. Sam instinctively looked up, his eyes wide, seeking connection in her words. But as she spoke, she felt the weight of their varying emotions, the unstructured chaos pooling into the ether like a fog descending on her mind. In this moment of turmoil, she questioned her role. Was she merely a guide, or was she the architect of their feelings? The responsibility felt enormous and expectations swirling amidst their nascent openness, and her insecurities were laid bare. All right, let us draw what's inside our hearts today. She ventured, eyes darting toward Sam. Would he feel safe to express again? His silence wove a precarious thread through her resolve. However, Sam's gaze vacillated, betraying a flicker of curiosity overshadowed by hesitation. Julia recalled her own apprehensions at that age, vividly feeling the sting of inadequacy. It's okay, Sam. I see you, she murmured softly, encouraging that layer of connection they had begun to build. Seeing that Sam was still reluctant, Julia changed her approach, employing the self-reflecting questions she had grappled with in her life. What would you draw if you weren't afraid? She wielded this challenge with care, offering a route for him to explore what lay beneath his reluctance. Sam hesitated for a moment, brow furrowing as he processed this new invitation, and Julia felt the weight of her own heart swell. Would he burst forth with expression, or be trapped within the lines he drew for himself? She watched his hand tremble as it hovered over the paper. A pivotal shift rippled through the room when Sam, after long moments of contemplation, began to sketch. His crayon strokes initially flickered and faltered, tears threatening to emerge as his emotions collided with creativity. The colors glowed with an intensity that made Julia hold her breath. It wasn't just a child drawing, it was vulnerability laid naked on the canvas. But amidst Sam's struggle, she overheard a spat of unkind words from another child against a peer's artwork. The sharpness cut through her, fracturing her focus as dread pinched her chest. How could she foster this environment of acceptance when insecurities flared like tempests among them? The devaluation of another could snuff out the little light Sam had begun to claim. Julia felt her own voice quiver as she challenged the negative remarks, taking a stand. In our magic, we support and uplift. No. One should feel less for what they create. Standing firm, she could feel her own intoxicating mixture of trepidation and determination course through her veins. But was it enough? Would this confrontation be her own emotional unraveling? In the midst of her internal tumult, she took a deep breath, wrestling the urge to retreat. An unexpected strength surged within. She needed to be the foundation for this exploration, not just for Sam, but for all of them. As the session wrapped, Julia looked around, her heart racing with both fear and exhilaration. The children were discovering their own emotions, but could she withstand the onslaught of what was to come? Perhaps, she mused, vulnerability could weave a tapestry strong enough to catch them all. In the silence, Julia felt the anticipation of an imminent storm ahead, one that would confront her understanding of her own worth as a facilitator. The thought filled her with both trepidation and resolve. How could she truly support them if she struggled to navigate her own turbulent emotions? An unspoken question loomed like a shadow. How far could she go to break her own barriers before she fell into despair? As the week unfolded, Julia could feel the residual echoes of the previous session lingering like an unresolved melody. The children's faces flashed through her mind, especially Sam's. She had challenged him, pushed him into the depths of his own unexpressed fears. But what of her own fears? Julia found herself tangled in her thoughts, questioning if she was capable of fostering the space she had envisioned. Each brush stroke she initiated carried the weight of unresolved emotions. The workshop was slowly transforming into a mirror, reflecting not only the children's inner worlds but her own burgeoning vulnerabilities. What if I'm not enough? The thought nagged at her, rising with increasing clarity. It wasn't just the words from the other child that had stung, it was a reflection of her own insecurities. She had witnessed a moment of magic in Sam, but it had come at the cost of chaos. Was she still capable of guiding them when she felt herself falter? Determined to ground herself, Julia devised an expression exercise for the next session. "Let us create masks," she announced at the start, watching the children's eyes brighten with intrigue. "These will be our protectors, showing what we feel inside." The concept seemed simple, yet it held the potential to peel back the layers they wore, the masks that obscured their true selves. As the children began to design their masks, Julia wandered among the tables, observing the various transformations. Bright colors flew from crayons, the chaos of creativity swirling as laughter and murmurs filled the air. Yet, as she paused by Sam's corner, she found him staring at a blank sheet, the weight of his emotions heavy in his stillness. "How's it going, Sam?" she asked, kneeling beside him. His eyes glimmered with the struggle to articulate feelings he hadn't yet shaped into form. "I don't know how to do it. What if it's not good enough?" he stammered, vulnerability spilling out of him like a cracked dam. In that moment, Julia felt an awakening. This was her chance to confront her own doubts. Wasn't art about feeling, not only producing? What if we draw what we feel, even if it's messy? The magic happens there. She gestured towards the works unfurling around them, emphasizing how each child had poured parts of themselves into their masks despite uncertainties. A flicker of hope ignited in Sam's eyes, and after what felt like a struggle against an invisible force, he began sketching, tentative at first, as if requiring affirmation with every stroke. Meanwhile, Julia felt the familiar pang in her chest, the fear of inadequacy twisting within her. What if her support for him revealed her own lack of direction? Yet she recognized this was part of the journey, learning and unlearning alongside the children. It was this confrontation that could aid her growth. As the session progressed, Julia's resolve deepened. She moved about the room, offering encouragement not only to Sam but to the other children as well, each time fortifying her sense of purpose. The atmosphere shifted from one of hesitation to an outpouring of creativity that danced like flames. Each laugh, each encouraging word summoned resolve from within her. She felt her own timidness start to crumble, piece by piece. Still, inner turmoil lingered. At the back of her mind, worries re-emerged. Was she guiding them toward their self-discovery, or leading them astray? And as children's work transformed, she realized a crucial shift. This experience was a shared voyage, a side-by-side exploration through which they all learned, not just the children but also herself. As the session came to a close, Julia stood amidst the vibrant chaos of colors and laughter. Each mask held a piece of their heart, yet a question brewed within her: how much more could she unravel within herself by guiding them in unraveling theirs? With her breath held and heart thumping against her ribs, Julia prepared for the next day. A journey into deeper layers of creativity and emotion loomed just ahead. What powerful revelations awaited them all? The morning light seeped through the windows, illuminating the remnants of yesterday's creativity scattered across the tables. Julia took a deep breath, savoring the warmth and excitement in the air. Today marked a pivotal moment, she could sense it within the very fabric of the space. With each passing second, the self-doubt that had clung to her began to evolve into something more resolute. As the children trickled in, their energy infused the room, igniting the embers of purpose within her. She greeted each of them, her smile genuine, masked by a quiet determination. "Today, we are going to explore the things we love and maybe even the things that scare us," Julia announced, her voice steady as she laid out brightly colored paper, scissors, and an array of art supplies. The concept was simple: create a collage of their emotions. She hoped that by piecing together fragments of joy, fear, and aspiration, they could engage in deeper introspection and exploration she too needed. Directing her gaze toward Sam, she concocted an idea. Would this prompt help him articulate those feelings he struggled to capture? "Sam, you seem excited," she said as he studied the array of materials. His eyebrows knitted together, betraying a mix of excitement and apprehension. What will you include in your collage? I'm not sure, he murmured, scratching the back of his head. What if it looks silly? Her heart ached at his vulnerability, a familiar struggle reflected back at her. Sometimes, the silliest things turn out to be the most beautiful, she replied gently. Let us just make art that feels true to you. As the children dove into their projects, Julia began to move between the tables, engaging with them, and gradually uncovering hidden layers of their personalities. She noticed insightful comments from a shy girl named Mia, who spoke about her fear of speaking in front of her class, contrasting sharply with her vivid collage of vibrant colors and bold imagery. Your collage is striking, Mia. It reflects a lot of emotions. What made you choose those colors? Julia asked, hoping to draw her out. Because I want to be brave, even if I'm scared, Mia whispered, her face flushed with pride. That simple declaration struck a chord within Julia, affirming the idea that vulnerability could coexist with strength. The more she listened, the more she found herself weaving their stories into her own narrative. Each child's honesty ignited a newfound understanding of her worthiness and capability, erasing the remnants of self-doubt. In the midst of this, Julia felt a deepening connection to herself. Each story shared, each struggle laid bare, was her acting as a mirror, not merely reflecting their emotions, but revealing the parts of herself she had hidden from view. She began to realize that her journey was not about perfection but authenticity. As the session neared its close, Julia's heart raced with excitement. I want everyone to share one thing they cherished most from their collage, she announced, her voice gaining strength. As each child spoke, their spirit blossomed before her eyes. The laughter, the tears, the hesitance, all of it melded into an exquisite tapestry of humanity. But when Julia noticed Sam's silence, a pang of concern crept into her. What about you, Sam? How do you feel about your creation? His downcast gaze slowly met hers, revealing an ocean of feelings swirling beneath the surface. I'm scared, Julia, he confessed, the vulnerability tangible. I want to show my collage, but what if no one understands it? That familiar ache of fear gripped Julia anew, and she understood, clearer than ever, that this moment was not just about Sam, it was her challenge, too. Could she allow vulnerability to guide them both toward transformation? As the weight of his words settled within her, Julia realized the next step in their journey awaited. Maybe we face our fears together, she said, her heart pounding. Let us share what we've created, no matter how silly it seems. As they moved toward the front of the room, Julia's thoughts spiraled deeper. Would this shared experience push them beyond their fears or expose them to new vulnerabilities? The time had come for both her and Sam to confront the unseen. What truths would surface when they dared to step into the light? As Julia stood before the group, anticipation crackled in the air. The laughter had quieted, replaced by a keen sense of focus. Sam moved uneasily beside her, aware that they were about to step into an emotional landscape that both excited and terrified him. Today, we share what we've created, Julia announced, determination filling her voice. These collages speak to who we are inside, not just what we show on the outside. Sam's shoulders tightened, his anxiety palpable, but Julia steadied herself. It was more than just a lesson for him, it was a rite of passage for her, too. One by one, the children presented their collages, unveiling vibrant images that were surprisingly honest. Julia watched as Mia spoke about the courage intertwining her fear of public speaking, while another boy, Lucas, shared a collage that expressed his dream of becoming an astronaut despite his doubts. Each story unveiled layers of their personalities, frangible, raw, yet exhilarating. Julia felt an exhilarating warmth blossom within her as she witnessed them bloom in authenticity. Then it was Sam's turn. Julia gently nudged him forward with a soft smile, summoning her own courage as the focus turned toward him. You know, Sam, she prompted him quietly, what if this moment is our chance to show how brave we can truly be? With hesitant movements, he unfolded his collage, revealing a stunning blend of colors that mirrored both the stormiest blues and the sunniest yellows. "This is me," he began, voice quaking but resolute. "The blue is for how I feel alone sometimes, and the yellow is for when I feel happy, like when we do art together." The layers of emotion held the room in a soft reverence, and the simplicity of his honesty struck Julia deeply. "And the dark part," he continued, "that's where I try to hide, but I don't want to be scared anymore." There was a pause as his words resonated, and Julia felt that familiar tug at her heart. This was neither just Sam's journey nor her own, it was a collective revelation nestled within the quiet space of vulnerability. As she looked at the children around her, Julia realized that their shared struggles were a thread that united them, flickering flames of hope pulling them from the edges of the shadows. "Thank you, Sam," she managed to say, voice warm with pride. "Your courage in sharing is a light for all of us." The room, charged with emotion, erupted into applause, and the laughter returned, somehow louder and lighter. Any apprehension that once clouded Sam's face transformed into relief, fueling the room's energy. With the session winding down, Julia sensed an authoritative pulse of change, both in her and her students. They had turned their vulnerability into power, a transformative discovery that planted roots deep within her. No longer was she just a facilitator of shared experiences, she was a relevant player in the narrative she had begun co-authoring with them. Days turned into weeks as they continued creating and sharing. Julia expertly wove in structured elements while maintaining a rich space for exploration. No longer did doubt haunt her every gesture. She had cultivated not just confidence but an awareness of her impact, a new level of competence transforming her approach to learning and teaching. Finally, the library director called a meeting with her again, but this time, Julia felt different. Standing before her with a sense of self-assertion, Julia presented the evolution of her sessions. "I've integrated structured creativity into every session," Julia explained, her conviction filling the room. "Balancing exploration with guidance has fostered a sense of belonging and connection for the kids." The director, impressed, nodded along as Julia relayed the importance of authenticity in learning. "You have grown remarkably, Julia," she said at last. "I see the impact you've made on the children, and your own transformation is inspiring. You're no longer just a librarian, but a guide in their journey to finding their voices." Yes, Julia thought, proud but grounded. She had indeed stepped into her light. Over the weeks, through every story shared, every fear confronted, she had achieved the personal growth she always craved. She had gone from feeling invisible to commanding a space filled with bright-eyed children eager to create and share their stories. Solid confidence anchored her now. With the culmination of this chapter in her life, Julia felt a stirring anticipation for what lay ahead. The journey of self-discovery, of shedding shadows and embracing brilliance, had just begun. As she looked out at her classroom, a vibrant gallery of dreams, fears, and aspirations, she knew one truth: this was her space, and she would continue to forge paths for herself and her students together. If you felt inspired by Julia's transformation and want to hear more stories of personal growth and courage, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like to feed the algorithm. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. And comment below with your thoughts and reactions. Let us join the conversation.